Everybody, we are back again with Mark Collinsworth, the CIO of Vere Global Wealth Management, to talk about Social Security. People are very fearful now that Trump and Musk and others are going to take away their Social Security or privatize it. So, Mark, what's going on? Is the Trump administration a threat to Social Security, or at least Social Security as we know it?
I think it's a threat to Social Security as we know it. They're
Me-
not going to take Social Security away. You'd have to have that's Social Security is actually a law. You'd have to get Congress and the Senate both to repeal it, and that's just not going to happen. So it's going to be it's definitely going to be there. It's actually even a mandatory payment. Social Security is actually one of two things that has to be paid out every year to its recipients. That's the interest on debt and Social Security payments. So Social Security is protected to that degree. But I believe what Trump wants to do is he wants to privatize it so that your money is not being just spent by a bunch of politicians.
Okay, now what I would offer here is what a lot of people say is the problem with privatization, that the way Social Security is now, even though you say in the long run it's unsustainable because of the way it works, so something has to be done. But if it's privatized and the market goes up and down, when the market is down, can a recipient depend on getting the same amount in their monthly Social Security check as they do now with the current system, where it's always the same month after month, no matter what the stock market is doing? If it's privatized, won't those fluctuations affect your monthly check? That's the big fear.
Happen that scenario, they would still keep that check the same, but as your portfolio went down in value, you just simply run out of money faster than what you normally would.
So, in other words, your Social Security wouldn't last as much as it does now.
Correct. But even now, you're not getting the returns that you should. Right now, your Social Security, the money that you put in Social Security is only growing at whatever government interest rates are. Your money goes in, and the government borrows your money to go out and give, a project to find out, how long a penguin in Australia will live wearing, a mongoose hat.
All right, but Mark, what I'm saying is, you just said that if it's privatized, your money could run out sooner. So yeah, that's hardly reassuring.
True, it could run out sooner, but I'm sure there'll be a government guarantee on it because, like I said, Social Security is actually designed as a required payment. So if it became privatized, I have a feeling what would happen is instead of the government basically keeping it alive, even though it's dead currently, your money would grow let's say an investment account. It would grow, but in those times where the stock market went against you and you lost some money, I think the government would come in and subsidize that.
Well, is that sustainable considering, all the debt that the U.S. is running?
Well, it's not sustainable, but it does work a whole lot better than the current system that we have.
Well, again, I don't understand how it would work better if the government would have to come in and supplement it when the government is shaky to begin with.
Well, right now the government's having to borrow money basically to make those payments to Social Security every year. If you put it in an investment account, and let's say the government right now has to subsidize Social Security, let's say with $1 billion per year. Well, if the stock market if you put it in the stock market and the stock goes up, and you now turn $1 billion into $4 billion, well, now that's 4 years the government didn't have to write out $1 billion check.
All right, and if you have a 1929 type crash in the stock market, and then what happens to your Social Security check?
Well, the government in that scenario just have to start printing more money to close the gap. So essentially, what I guess the easiest thing to say here is Social Security probably should have never been started with in the beginning. It was or I should say, Social Security should have stayed in its original format. In its original format, if you put $1 in Social Security, that dollar was basically there for only for you as an individual to ever tap into.
That's because there's no lockbox as
Correct. Technically there was a lockbox on it, and somebody several decades ago got the idea. How about if we just basically take the Social Security money and loan it to the United States government, and we'll pay a interest rate on it?
yeah. All right, so it, why don't we explore a little bit what's making Social Security unsustainable as it is?
Well, originally, when Social Security was first formed, there were 7 people contributing to Social Security for every one person pulling out of Social Security.
Right.
Today, there's 5 people pulling out from Social Security for every one person contributing to it.
And plus, they're writing Social Security for other expenses, right?
Correct. And there's people like, if you're let's say you're a child and your parent dies, you collect that Social Security check, even though you may have never contributed to Social Security for those years.
And if you have a brother or a sister, there's two kids.
If there's 2 kids, I believe they've received 2 Social Security checks.
So in other words, it's a double payment to two kids from
Correct.
one parent who passed away.
Correct. And the same thing for I believe it also if you're disabled, you can collect Social Security for being permanently disabled.
So, Mark, you're saying that something. Well, a lot of people are saying something has to be done because, well, what is it? By 2035, and we won't. Social Security will fall apart unless something is done.
Correct. I did a paper on this when I was in grad school, and I'd actually predict. Of course, this was back in the late '90s. I'd predicted Social Security to go bankrupt in 2005. Well, here we are, in 2025, and it's still kicking
Why did it go bankrupt in 2005?
because you can never underestimate how much money the U.S. government can print.
But every time they print more money, inflation goes up, right?
Correct. They take on more debt. So technically they don't print money. They basically just issue more debt. It's just a adding an extra zero on a computer program that just magically makes money appear out of thin air.
And again, that's unsustainable in the long run.
In the long run, it is not.
Okay, so by 2035, if nothing is adjusted, nothing changed with Social Security as it currently is, what happens? Does it become insolvent?
Well, that depends on the rating on how much money can the government actually print. So, like right now, you'll find this interesting. About 64% of all the government revenue that currently comes in the government goes to pay for Medicare, Social Security, and interest on our debt. Our interest on our debt right now has grown to about $1.2 trillion dollars. So by the end of this year, we'll pay $1.2 trillion dollars in just interest on our debt, not principal, just interest. Well, the government only brings in $4 trillion dollars a year in revenue. So by 2000, roughly 2035, if my numbers are correct, between those three things, 100% of the government revenue will go to pay Social Security, Medicare, and interest on our debt. And
So,
the government will have to borrow another $5 trillion. So your deficit really going to go to you basically the long story short, here in about another 10 years, if nothing changes, the government's going to have to borrow about $10 trillion a year just to stay in business.
and I mean, how doable is that to be borrowing that kind of money every year?
Not possible. I mean, I always ask this question to people. Do you know what was happening 1 trillion seconds ago? Seconds, 1 trillion seconds ago.
What?
1 trillion seconds ago, cavemen were actually drawing on walls. 1 trillion seconds equates to about 28,000 years ago. Now, try to imagine that 28,000 years ago, and we have what, $35 trillion in debt right now.
Yeah. All right. So, something has to be done. So they probably will do something, but will it be any better? And again, here's another question people have. If it's privatized, it's like your own Wall Street account. Do you have to interact with it? Do you have to keep track of the markets and all that, or will it be done for you? Because most people
Well,
are not that sophisticated to really watch the markets and watch the investments and all that.
Well, this is the thing. The government believes that everyone is an idiot and they're like little children, and you elect your senators and Congress people to be your daddy and mommy so they can take care of you because you're too stupid to do it yourself. So, if I had to guess, if anything gets done, it'll be put to where the government still has control over it. But if I really had to guess at the end of the day, because Social Security is an actual law that's put in place, you would have to get you'd have to have over 60 people in the Senate and have a majority in the House of Representatives to get it done. And right now, with there only being what 54 Senate seats in the GOP's hand, I really doubt you'll be able to get that 60 to change the law.
So where does that leave us then with Social Security? I mean, it's unstable, you're saying long term. So
Long term.
they do have to change it. They do have to do something. And you think the thrust is good. Well, will Trump have enough support to get it privatized?
That's the trick. He's got to get 60 votes because Social Security is an actual law. It requires 60 votes in the Senate and requires 51% in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, but I mean, the public sentiment against privatization is negative, isn't it?
That's another thing. That's why those senators and those Congress people are going to be very, very difficult to get them to vote for something that could end their careers. Just like with Obamacare, look at how many Congress people and senators lost their jobs at the next election simply because they voted for what they thought was a great idea.
Okay, so wrapping up, Mark, you're saying that Social Security as it is will not be sustainable. So something has to be done. But the question is, can it be done politically?
I think the bigger question right now is can it be done? Because from a political standpoint, I just don't see how you can get the votes right now.
Yeah. So therefore, it doesn't seem doable.
To me, to be completely honest, I don't think it's doable.
So therefore, Social Security goes down.
Well, nope. As long as the government can keep borrowing money from foreign countries, Social Security will stay alive. Now, the question is, what happens when foreign countries no longer want to loan the United States government money?
I mean, we've talked about that too, that, the debt is so enormous that eventually it's an increasing possibility that the country could actually go bankrupt, correct?
Well, I think the key to that is if the U.S. dollar is referred to as the petrodollar. All crude oil in the world has to be bought with U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
So if the United States, and that's why we have such high demand for our debt, is because foreign countries basically buy our debt, which is priced in US dollars. It pays interest in US dollars, and they use that to buy oil with. If there is a competing currency like the euro or yen or something that you can also purchase uh, oil with, that would dramatically lessen the demand for people wanting to buy US dollars or, more to the point, buying US debt.
And how likely is that to happen?
I would say there's a lot of talk about it right now about getting rid of um, the U.S. dollar as the petrodollar. There's a lot of talk, and there's a lot of countries, especially since the Ukraine incident has happened. Russia doesn't like their oil being traded in dollars. China certainly doesn't like buying dollars to have to buy their oil. So there has been a lot of talk about from a lot of different nations that they pretty much are just fed up with the United States and want an alternative.
Actually, when you think about it, what what leverage does the U.S. have to keep the dollar a petrodollar? I mean, what
There
makes
really isn't. Pretty much the main reason is they pretty much guard the oil wells from around the world. They pretty much guard that. So those countries that we basically give a helping hand to the military wise, they pretty much agree to basically only trade oil in dollars.
well, that was the deal with Saudi Arabia, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, where we made sure that the House of Saud remained, nobody deposed them in return for our control of the oil.
Correct. And a lot of people don't realize this, but some of the largest military bases in the world are located right there in the Middle East.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Mark Collinsworth, always interesting talking with you. I don't know if it's uplifting or not, but it explains a lot of things about the economy. So, Mark will be talking in this unstable climate on Wall Street and the U.S. debt. Mark, thanks for talking with us.
Anytime, as I always say, just when it looks like it's the darkest and you lost all hope, guess what? It's going to get worse.
Thanks a lot, Mark. See you
You're
later.
welcome.